Hey, greetings everyone. Hello, hello. How are you? Oh, that's nice to hear. I am well as well. On this show, Lore of Warcraft, which you have tuned into, we are going to continue our journey through the side lore, which this is the Warcraft movie novel. Um, we're on chapter 4, the last one. They finally went through the Dark Portal. Draka, Drekthar, Orgrim, and Duratar, as well as probably a few other Frostwolves, plus many of the Horde's finest warriors. And in going through, Draka's birth was triggered, and Gul'dan is holding up her baby, which is also green. We have also wrapped recently a couple things on the Patreon episode. We did all of the collectibles in the San Gimignano district. We also finished Western Plaguelands completely on Horde and Alliance, and we're going to kick off the short little area of Burning Steppes as we prep for Blackrock Depths and Lower Blackrock Spire. So stay a while and listen as we read Chapter 4 of Warcraft, the movie, the novel. The city was dim and loud and hot. Fire burned in its center as it had for years. The sounds of hammer on iron and the hiss of quenching water, too, were ceaseless. The air smelled faintly of smoke, though the cavernous construction made sure it was always breathable. Its name reflected its people, to the point, descriptive and active, Ironforge. The king of the dwarven underground capital, fiercely red of beard and bulbous of nose, escorted his guest through the main forge area. He was shaking his head as if disbelieving something, even as his feet moved purposefully. He pointed a sausage-thick finger up at his companion. "You're the only man I'd make plow blades for, Anduin Lothar," he grumbled in his deep, melodious voice. "You and your army of farmers can attack the turf with dwarven steel, eh? Sends a shiver down my spine just to say it. What will my wives think?" Anduin Lothar, the only man King Magni Bronzebeard would make plow blades for, smiled down at his old friend. Tall, well-built but not massive, the Lion of Stormwind was easy in royal company. He had spent most of his life fighting and drinking beside the man who currently sat on the throne of Stormwind, and knew Magni well. "The military man's curse, my lord," he said. Affection made the wry words warm. "The better I do my job, the less I'm asked to do it." Magni harumphed. "Well," he said, resigning himself to the situation, "it's still good to see you, old friend. We'll have your wagons packed and on their way as soon as they're ready." Lothar pushed beside one of the crates and ran his hand longingly and carefully along the glinting surface of what surely had to be the finest plow blades in existence. "Come," Magni continued, "I've got something for you." He had placed the hammer he had been carrying on a narrow table next to a small wooden box. Lothar stepped beside him, curious. Magni opened the box, and Lothar peered at it with interest. Inside, nestled against creamy white fabric, was an item the likes of which he had never seen. Made of metal, it had a wide mouth on one end, almost like a horn instrument. The other end was curved, and connected them was a narrow rod. In a separate section was a collection of thumbnail-sized metal spheres. Lothar was at a loss. "What is it?" he inquired. "A mechanical marvel," Magni exclaimed, reaching for the thing with the same sort of doting expression some men reserved for their newborn children. "It's a boomstick." He lifted it out of the box, holding the curved end. "Hold it like this," Magni said. "Put a bit of powder in here. Quick tap down with the rod, ball in after. Another tap, the flint goes here." He lifted the weapon and pointed it, staring down its length like an archer taking aim. Puzzlement drew his unruly scarlet brows together, and he lowered the weapon. "Odd," he murmured, absently returning Lothar's gift to him. Lothar, tucking the weapon in his belt, looked where Magni was staring and saw one of the king's couriers running flat out toward them. He felt his spine straighten, his senses heighten, his whole body tensing, ready to spring into action as needed. Dwarves strode, stomped, ambled, and sometimes darted. They seldom ran, and certainly not like this. Something was very wrong. The dwarf's face was nearly as florid as his king's beard as he charged up the steps. his pace never slowing until he dropped to his knees in front of Magni. He was too breathless for words and gulped metal-tinged air as he extended a rolled-up parchment. "Take water," Magni instructed the courier. The king's thick fingers were swift and nimble as he unrolled the missive. While Magni read, Lothar pointed the boomstick as the king had done, then peered curiously into the end of the metal cylinder, reaching for the small sphere inside and digging it out to examine it. Glancing back at Magni, Lothar saw his friend's genial face harden. Slowly he looked up and met Lothar's questioning gaze, and there was resolve and a hint of sorrow in his eyes. "You might want to head home, big man. Seems someone has attacked one of your garrisons." Lothar crouched low over the king's griffin as she flew towards Stormwind. The creature, half lion, half eagle, was one of a handful that His Majesty Lane possessed, and they were seldom ridden save for official business. His position on the griffin's back told her that the rider wanted her top speed, and she was giving it to him. Lothar's mind raced as fast as the griffin's rapidly beating wings. Attacked? By whom or what? The missive had been lacking in detail. No mention of casualties or numbers, just the simple facts that there had been an attack. Surely it was not the trolls. He, Medivh, and Lane had sent the blue-skinned, tusked creatures packing the last time they had come sniffing around Stormwind. Light, there was even a statue to Medivh for his part in the victory. The griffin tucked in her wings for a sharp dive, and Lothar clung tightly to the saddle. Below, outside the Stormwind barracks, two of his lieutenants, Karos, tall, sharp-featured, and rigidly at attention, and dark-skinned Varys, ever the more patient of the two, awaited him. They looked proper and professional, their faces composed, but Lothar had served with them and knew that he'd been right. Something was terribly wrong here. He vaulted off the griffin as soon as she landed outside the royal barracks. She gave him a headbutt, and he patted her neck, handing off her reins to an attendant. Lothar wasted no time shoving the scroll in Karos' chest. "This missive tells me there is an attack. Start talking now." Varys nodded as they strode inside and hastened down the stairs into the infirmary. Chandeliers provided dim lighting, casting an eerie glow on the rows of white-shrouded, silent forms. "Yes, sir. We know about as much as you do, sir. The garrison sent a message asking for reinforcements, but by the time we arrived, they were all dead, sir." "No survivors." Lothar was aghast. "Not one." He looked from Varys' distinguished dark face to Karos' pale one. "No, sir. We found only the dead at the site," Karos replied. "We brought the bodies back here." "Two search parties are unaccounted for," Varys said. The bodies are..." The two soldiers exchanged glances. Lothar had a reputation for inspiring men to follow him, but right now he wanted to knock their heads together. "You best come see, sir." Lothar strode down the corridors of the barracks, trying desperately to wrap his mind around what he was being told. "An entire garrison," he demanded, "and no one who can tell us anything." Silence broken only by the ring of booted feet on stone. Again, the two soldiers looked at one another. "We did find someone." "He was searching the bodies," Karos said. Lothar glanced at him and saw that sweat was trickling down his temple. "You found him at the site?" "No, sir," Karos said. "It was after we brought them back. We found him here, in the barracks." "In the barracks?" Lothar's voice carried in the hall, and he didn't care. "By the light, what idiot failed to notice someone looting soldiers' bodies right here in the damn barracks?" "We think he's a mage, sir," Varys said quickly. A mage. Someone who could make sure that he wouldn't be seen. Lothar's stride faltered, but he kept going. That would certainly answer the question he had just posed to his obviously rattled men, but it raised about 1,000 others. He kept his voice calm. "Were you able to restrain him, or did he turn you into sheep?" He didn't even try to keep the irritation out of his voice. "Yes, sir," Karos said. Yes, we've got him. We're taking you to him right now." They'd put the intrusive perhaps mage in the barracks office and set a guard to watch him. The guard saluted smartly, stepped aside, and opened the door with a skeleton key. Lothar had expected to confront an old man with a long white beard who would fix him with an arrogant expression. He was not prepared to find what looked to be a rather dirty, scruffy teenage boy. He was perusing a book that had been left on the desk and looked up with huge brown eyes as Lothar stalked in. The boy leaped to his feet. "Finally!" he exclaimed. "Are you in command?" Lothar had already seized his arm, yanked him around, and shoved him down on the desk. He reached for the measuring compass and slammed it down, trapping the boy's left arm between the sharp edges and pinning it to the desk's wooden surface. He tugged the young intruder's sleeve down. Varys had been right. Branded on the youth's arm was the image of an eye. "Shalaros!" yelped the boy, his eyes glowing with blue light. Lothar's free hand covered the mage's mouth, muffling the incantation. Bright cerulean magic swirled in the boy's right fingers, fading without the power of words to feed it. Lothar pushed his face in close to the mage's. "That's the mark of the Kirin Tor. What are you doing in my city, spell chucker?" The young mage sagged and lowered his hand. The magic he had summoned disappeared. Cautiously, Lothar removed his hand and let him speak. "Let me complete my examination of the body across the hall," he said calmly, as if his words were actually reasonable. Lothar grinned ferally. "Now, why would I do that?" The boy's dark brows drew together. Frustration? Concern? "Within that body is the secret to your attacks." He licked his lips, suddenly looking like a teenage boy again. "I can help you." Lothar's eyes narrowed as he searched the boy's face. He hadn't got to where he was without being a good judge of people, and there was something about the boy that was genuine. Lothar escorted the young mage to the room he'd requested, keeping a firm grip on the eye-marked arm as he did so. Karos pushed back the curtain, revealing the corpse the mage had been caught examining. Lothar stopped so quickly that Varys, bringing up the rear, almost bumped into him. Hardened soldier that he was, Lothar had witnessed myriad deaths, from the civilized to the brutal, but this? Both eyes and mouth were open. The skin was gray and striated with darker threads like gangrene, but nothing so familiar. The cheeks were sunken, and the eyes, encrusted with what looked like a rim of salt, were hard and glassy. Nothing about this thing, if it could even be called a body, was natural. The young mage didn't answer. He too looked repelled by what he saw, but resolute to continue with his investigation. He analyzed the body, observing everything, then his gaze wandered inexorably to the barely human face. Steeling himself, the boy leaned over and gingerly inserted 2 fingers into the open mouth, pulling the jaw down. Lothar leaned in to watch, disgusted and fascinated as the mage's fingers probed. A faint tendril of green mist spouted upward and then vanished. The soldiers, Lothar among them, gasped. The mage leaped back, covering his mouth and nose with his sleeve, clearly not wanting the strange green steam to touch him. His face was pale, and he swallowed hard before turning to face Lothar. "What was that?" Lothar demanded. The youth took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "You must summon the Guardian. It should be he who explains it." It was a statement, not a request. Lothar blinked. "Medivh?" asked Karos, eyeing his commander. "We're wasting time," the boy insisted. Lothar regarded him with narrow eyes. "Only the king summons the Guardian, not I, and certainly not some scruffy puppy who barely has his first whiskers." To Karos he said, "Get him to Goldshire." The night was old, and dawn was not far away as Lothar's griffin landed gracefully near the cozy Lion's Pride Inn. The air was damp and chill, the forest sounds that of the night creatures going about their business rather than the song of birds. A few yards distant, some of the locals had gathered despite the hour, making an outing of their own to ogle the king, his guard, and the flurry of activity. "Beast, you say?" The voice was calm, quiet, but commanding, and cut cleanly through the cacophony of several other voices all talking at once. Of course, Lothar thought as the royal guard saluted smartly and allowed him entrance into the Lion's Pride Inn. That might simply be how it seemed to him, considering how well he knew it. King Laenrin was tall, with dark hair, wise, kind eyes, and a neatly trimmed beard. He looked every inch the king, even now, clad as he was in less formal clothing. The royal family had been enjoying a day's outing in Elwyn Forest when Lane had received a similar missive to the one the dwarven courier had given King Magni. They had retreated to the inn to begin analyzing the situation. Lothar felt a stab of misplaced nostalgia. A Until this very moment, the inn located in the little village of Goldshire had been a place where he, Lane, and Medivh had gathered to laugh, game, and drink. Now it was a makeshift war room. Several of the inn's tables had been pushed together, and maps, letters, and inkwells covered them. Lothar had to smile as he noticed beer mugs anchoring the curling edges of the parchment. What manner of beasts could do what you have reported? Lane continued. He was visibly struggling to stay calm as he examined the shield of a Stormwind soldier that bore a gash so enormous it had almost split the metal facing. One of the officers, with dark hair and darker eyes, shook his head. Rumors, your majesty. From 3 different valleys, Alaman, one of Lothar's finest soldiers, pointed out. Her blue-gray eyes were hard. I've heard a dozen conflicting descriptions, a third officer said. It's a rebellion, sire, a fourth chimed in. Rebels, beasts, the first officer said, exasperated. We need more information. Lane spotted Lothar, the furrow in his brow easing. Lothar, he called, have you learned anything that can help? A little, perhaps, Lothar said. Queen Taria, standing next to her husband, also looked up at the sound of her brother's voice. Their eyes met, and she gave him a strained smile. Taria looked as regal as Lane, but Lothar well knew her doe eyes and demure demeanor had hid a fierce intelligence and a stubborn streak as wide as, well, his own. Lothar spoke quickly, avoiding supposition and sticking to facts, telling them about the young mage and the peculiar wisp of green that had escaped the dead man's lips. He finished with, Also, my liege, I've been told to summon the Guardian. So hop to it, man. I'll get right on it, Lane said wryly, then sobered. Is there still no word from Grand Hamlet? Taria asked softly. Grand Hamlet, a town as quaint and quiet as Goldshire, had been where both she and Lothar had grown up. It lay to the south of Elwyn Forest and had fallen mysteriously silent, and unfortunately Lothar had no reassurance for his sister. He shook his head. Lane gazed at him, utterly at a loss. How does a garrison of 30 men disappear without a whisper? The Fell, came a young, strong voice. Or at least its influence. The chatter faltered. Lane, along with everyone else in the room except for Lothar, looked to the door and the newcomer who stood there. The king raised an eyebrow. Is this him? Yes, Lothar, uncertainly. Lothar replied, distracted. His attention was drawn beyond the mage to the young soldier who had been chosen to escort him, now standing rigidly at attention. Damn it. Lothar pressed his lips together, nodding in answer to Lane's query. Sergeant Callan, Taria said, pleasure warming her voice. Callan inclined his head. Your Majesty? His voice, tenor, just a little too formal. Was I ever that young? Lothar thought. Thank you, Sergeant, he said, sharply, reaching to take the young mage and steer him toward Lane. Callan saluted and took up a position beside the door, awaiting further orders. So, Lane said, his voice hard. Who are you, mage? My name is Khadgar, the boy answered. I am the Guardian Novitiate. If the room had quieted when Khadgar first spoke, now it was so silent that the crackle of the fire seemed loud. He looked around, uncomfortable with the attention, and continued. I was. I renounced my vows. More silence. There's, not really a protocol in place officially, you understand. It was more of a personal decision. The ultimate result being my leaving Dalaran and the Kirin Tor, and... I'm not Guardian material, he finished rather lamely. You mean you're a fugitive? Lothar interrupted. The boy, Khadgar, turned to him, bridling at the accusation. I'm not hiding. Lothar redirected Khadgar's attention to the king. Your Majesty, Khadgar said, stepping forward, I may have left my training, but I didn't leave my abilities behind. Any more than you could leave, knowing how to swing a sword if you decided not to be a soldier. Look, he ran a hand through his brown hair. I've sensed something. Dark forces. When it's strong, it almost has a smell. A chill crept along Lothar's skin, and he knew the boy wasn't lying. Knowing that something so evil was so close, I couldn't just ignore it. I think... A sudden shriek from outside, followed by a babble of frightened voices, cut him off. Callan rushed to the door and opened it, calling for order. What's going on out there? Lothar demanded of the youth. The boy turned his impossibly young face to his commanding officer. Smoke, sir, to the southeast. Your Majesty, Khadgar said, his whole body tense, I urge you to engage the Guardian with all haste. They reached Elwyn Forest, one of the guards declared. Grand Hamlet is burning! Lothar and Lane locked gazes, then Lothar strode to the window. The guard had been right. In the pre-dawn darkness, it was ease itself to spot a sullen but sinister orange-red glow surging just above tree line. The wind shifted, bringing the acrid scent to his nostrils. Taria was beside him, one hand on his arm. An attack. She was of noble birth and royalty by marriage. She kept her voice steady. Only he who knew her so well could hear the slight tremor in it, feel her fear in the grip on his arm. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She knew. Her expression changed as she analyzed his. What? She asked. Lothar pitched low for her ears only. Stop requesting Callan. She looked at him, unable in this moment to feign confusion. He lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. Stay out of my business. Taria didn't deny it, only saying as if the words explained everything. He wants to follow in his father's footsteps. There were 10,000 things wrong with that, and Lothar wanted to address at least 3,000 of them, but there was no time. Instead, he said, Stop helping him. Tread carefully, Taria said. You talk to your queen. That coaxed a sly smile from Lothar, and he leaned into her. You are my sister first, he reminded her. She couldn't argue that. Lane came up behind them, regarding Lothar with grave brown eyes. When was your last visit to Karazhan? The king asked. With you, I don't know, 6 years? 6 years, a long time. How had they slipped by like this? The three of them had been so close once. Lane looked surprised. You've had no contact with Medivh since then. Not for lack of trying, Lothar muttered. I know my letters were received, but I might have saved myself the trouble of hiring a courier and simply lit them on fire after writing them. I gather you've not heard from him either. Lane shook his head. Well, he said grimly, looking at his hand, he can't hide from us now. He pulled off a ring with a large, winking blue gem and pressed it into Lothar's outstretched palms. Their eyes met. The Guardian, said Lane. He's summoned. Okay, so we had a lot of interesting things as we build up to what would become Warcraft Orcs and Humans. Grand Hamlet burning. So the Orcs they're beginning their Warcraft Orcs and Humans warpath now. And now we are finally summoning the Guardian, and we're getting introduced to some of the Alliance players in this movie/book. All right, thank you everyone so much for joining. If you like everything that you saw today, go ahead and smash that subscribe if for some reason you haven't this many chapters in. But leave a comment, leave a like, and keep this channel churning and burning. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll catch you on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft. This episode, In the Pipe, 5x5.